Welcome back, history enthusiasts. Today, we're diving deep into a dark and somber chapter of the 20th century. A chapter marked by unimaginable horrors and brutality, a stark testament to the inhumanity that can arise during times of war, the Nanjing Massacre. We will learn about the events leading up to it, the horrifying scale of violence, and its lasting aftermath. Buckle up, this is a journey that takes us into the heart of darkness, reminding us of the urgency to remember, to learn, and to strive for peace. The Nanjing Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanking, is a grim reminder of the worst forms of human cruelty. Between December 1937 and January 1938, during the Second Sino-Japanese War, the Japanese Imperial Army captured the city of Nanjing, then capital of the Republic of China, and perpetrated an array of atrocities that resulted in mass murder and sexual violence. This 6-week reign of terror claimed the lives of an estimated 200,000 to 300,000 Chinese civilians and disarmed soldiers. The Second Sino-Japanese War, which spanned from 1937 to 1945, provides the broad historical backdrop for the Nanjing Massacre. This conflict, one of the largest Asian wars of the 20th century, represented Japan's aggressive attempt to dominate East Asia. It began with the Marco Polo Bridge incident on July 7, 1937, escalating a series of earlier regional clashes into full-scale war. Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the nationalist government of China, adopted a strategy of trading space for time, often retreating to conserve forces. However, by the fall of 1937, the Japanese had taken Shanghai after a fierce battle that lasted over 3 months. Led by General Uematsu, the Japanese forces continued their campaign westward, aiming for the capture of Nanjing, which was seen as a significant political and symbolic objective. The defending Chinese troops, already exhausted and depleted from the Battle of Shanghai, put up a desperate but ultimately futile resistance. By December 13, 1937, Nanjing fell to the Japanese. This marked the beginning of 6 weeks of horror known today as the Nanjing Massacre. Japanese troops began a systematic campaign of violence against the city's residents. They committed indiscriminate acts of murder, rape, arson, and looting. Thousands were used for bayonet practice or simply mowed down by machine gun fire. Women from young girls to elderly suffered brutal sexual assault, while vast areas of the city were set ablaze. The Nanjing Massacre is a sobering testament to the atrocities committed during war. The details are chilling and paint a picture of extreme brutality that shook the very foundations of international law and human decency. In understanding the horrifying events that took place in Nanjing and acknowledging its victims, we remember not just a battle or a war, but a cautionary tale of human suffering that underscores the importance of maintaining peace, justice, and respect for human rights on the global stage. When the gates of the city of Nanjing fell to the Japanese Imperial Army on December 13, 1937, it marked the beginning of a horrifying period in human history that left an indelible mark on the annals of war atrocities. Over the next 6 weeks, the city bore witness to an unparalleled display of savagery and cruelty, forever remembered as the Nanjing Massacre. In the days and weeks following the city's capture, the Japanese soldiers initiated a spree of terror and violence, systematically exterminating thousands of Chinese prisoners of war. These helpless captives were marched to the outskirts of the city, often under the guise of relocation, only to be greeted with a hail of machine gun fire, their bodies unceremoniously dumped into mass graves or the Yangtze River. Eyewitness accounts from those horrifying days detail how the river transformed into a gruesome testament to these mass killings, turning red from the sheer amount of blood. But the mass executions were not confined to prisoners of war alone. Innocent civilians of Nanjing, men, women, children, and the elderly, were routinely rounded up and brutally murdered in public view. These acts of unmitigated violence were not merely spontaneous bursts of savagery, but part of a chillingly systematic and deliberate campaign of terror. The barbarism reached such a level that Japanese soldiers engaged in macabre kill competitions. One such contest involved Lieutenants Toshiaki Mukai and Tsuyoshi Noda, who vied to be the first to reach a kill count of 100 using only their swords. This horrifying competition was even reported in the Tokyo Nichi Shimbun, a popular Japanese daily, underscoring the extent of the dehumanization. A terrifying aspect of the Nanjing Massacre was the rampant sexual violence inflicted upon the women of Nanjing. This widespread and systematic rape of women across age groups earned the massacre another grim moniker, the Rape of Nanking. Tens of thousands of women were estimated to have been subjected to such horrors, with many killed afterward in a horrific attempt to eliminate witnesses to these crimes. The mass scale of this sexual violence was so pronounced that John Rabe, a German businessman who set up the Nanjing safety zone to protect civilians, remarked in his diary that there was probably no crime that hadn't been committed in the city during this time. Civilians in Nanjing lived under a constant cloud of fear. The Japanese soldiers, in their bid to instill terror, perpetrated violence at a scale seldom seen before. They ran rampant through the streets and neighborhoods, looting homes, murdering inhabitants, and indulging in indiscriminate rape. Many civilians were deceived into mass gatherings under the pretense of safety or routine checks, only to be slaughtered en masse. Adding to this was the horror of forced labor and human experimentation, with many civilians abducted and subjected to horrific medical experiments by the infamous Unit 731, the Japanese Army's covert biological and chemical warfare research unit. The scale of the Nanjing Massacre is a contentious issue, with estimates of the death toll ranging from 200,000 to 300,000. Nanjing was devastated, a vast portion of the city reduced to rubble, and its population significantly decreased, either through death or displacement. Despite the rampant violence, a handful of individuals managed to survive and bear witness to the carnage. Among these survivors were Xie Shukin and Lai Xuing, whose chilling accounts of the massacre added invaluable personal narratives to the historical documentation. Additionally, foreign nationals such as John Rabe and Minnie Vautrin documented the horrific events, their diaries and reports providing an objective international perspective on the atrocities committed by the Japanese Army. The Nanjing Massacre left profound societal and psychological scars on its survivors and the broader Chinese society. It significantly shaped Sino-Japanese relations, casting a long shadow that persists to this day. Internationally, the atrocities led to numerous war crimes trials during the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. However, many perpetrators of the massacre were never brought to justice. In the years following the massacre, efforts have been made to ensure the victims are remembered and the horrific events are not forgotten. The Memorial Hall of the Victims in Nanjing Massacre by Japanese invaders was established as a testament to the victims and a place for the world to understand the depth of the atrocities committed. The Nanjing Massacre serves as a grim reminder of the horrors of war, underscoring the importance of peace, justice, and respect for human dignity. By remembering this atrocity, we strive to prevent such a catastrophe from occurring again. Thank you for joining us on this historical adventure. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories from the past. Until next time.